Welcome to the second 6 weeks curriculum previews for second grade. Let's take a look at the expectations for the second 6 weeks. If you take a look at our new reading levels, satisfactory for this 6 weeks will be a level J. Level K will be a strong, and level I will be limited. By the end of the 6 weeks, we want students reading independently for greater than 20 minutes at a time. But that is with a purpose as well, like some type of expectation that you have for them. So 300 minutes of independent reading, 300 minutes of guided reading. We want them to be reading all Unit 1 sight words, knowing them in isolation and knowing them when they come to them and when they read them in text. The expectation we have for them is to retell important events in a logical order and describe details used to help readers get a clearer understanding, and then to read with increasingly comprehension and fluency. Our new planning documents that we talked about last 6 weeks are the key focus lessons that you find in yearly content. And you're going to see that it also, we have broken it out to show you what Unit 2 would look like. You're going to be using the primary toolkit, next steps in guided reading, the continuum, phonics lessons. But then it tells you basically what are you going to do. Distinguish between important ideas and supporting details. Use 3 times of thinking, stop and jot, introduce what's the heart of the story. And then those are some of your main things. Also, I hope that you have found the Unit 2 Planning for Learning for second 6 weeks unit. We have made a planning document for you to use in your PLC times. It shows at the very top the key things that are going on during this 6 weeks that are those that you've had and then those that are new. Hoping that as you plan, this will help you, this document will help you. Let's take a look at word study. If you've not used the English word study, I would really highly suggest going to the Norma Jackson resources and downloading the second grade English word study. We have given you a pacing guide that will help you in planning your instruction and then in mastery of the standards. Week 7-8, you're going to spell high frequency words. That is in response to 2.23c. We need to tell kids that there are certain words that they just need to know how to spell, because there's no way that we would know that in the word could would you know that O-U-L-D is in the middle. You just have to put that to memory and to heart and know those words. Week 9 and 10 is spelling simple contractions, and we've given you a list of what contractions that need to be mastered and taught to the students. Weeks 11 and 12 spell base words with inflectional endings, adding vowel suffixes to one-syllable vowel consonant sneaky E words. We've actually, in the document, you have things that you put in your writing notebook, our handbook, and then things that you take home. So it's a great resource for you to do in your planning for spelling. New this year is the academic vocabulary that we have added. It's on in your unit overview, but also we have included a new document that is now in yearly contents. We have it translated now. Here are the academic in English and in Spanish for you, and make sure that you're teaching the students within the context of how you use these and why it's important to know what these words mean. Then also you have your vocabulary words, 10 to 12 vocabulary words selected from mentor texts that you're using, that you're going to be using with kids and throughout the 6 weeks. So just know that in your word study time with your word work, knowing that that's that 5 to 10 minutes, or that you bring kids to the rub or whole group. Here's some other things that you really need mastery of. R-controlled vowels, vowel digraphs and diphthongs, consonant digraphs, words with common prefixes and suffixes, singular and plural nouns, and the recognition of some abbreviations. So let's take a look at your reading workshop. You've had 6 weeks to really build the environment and build that place where kids can be independent. Hopefully your word study is going each day about 5 to 10 minutes where you're practicing vocabulary, phonics, and spelling. Then you're going into your reading workshop time. And kids know that there's a focus lesson where you're going to come together to learn. You're going to model your thinking to students. And then they're going to go out to independent practice And one of those independent practice is independent reading, but they are applying the skills that you've taught in the focus lesson with that independent reading. Now is a time that we're going to be for sure that your reading group should be starting to be established, and maybe you've already got them going after the BOY, using that summary report, running records, and all those anecdotal notes to group your kids into those groups. And so right now we are in full throttle with reading workshop. Your lead standards this 6 weeks is in reading. The student is expected to retell important events and stories in a logical order, figure 19E. That is your broad lead standard. So what are the partnering standards that are going to help you? In the strategies, you're going to be having kids learning how to ask relevant questions, how to locate facts and details in stories, and then support their evidence from text. Then we're going to teach children how to ask literal questions of text. When you're doing that close reading, how do you get them to ask themselves questions about what is within the text that they know that the author is saying? Then fluency. We're going to expect them to recognize that punctuation and use proper stress and intonation to mark the ends of sentences. Through that, you're going to use your genres or literary texts of theme and genre, poetry, and procedural text. That doesn't mean that you can't read fiction and those, but these are the things that you are really going to master. So let's take a look at some of the focus lessons that we have. Remember that you can follow along in your overview. I'm on page 6. So when you're filling out that lesson planner, what are the things that you're going to be putting in there? One of the first things is on page 6, you're going to have an anchor lesson, an anchor chart lesson with your billboard about introducing big questions that they're going to study all year long. The overview gives you specifics about how to do that, but that is the anchor chart. They'll be putting that into their reading notebook. Then the next thing is that you're going to be introducing thick and thin questions. In your overview, that gives you that overview about what is a thick question, what's a thin question. There's lots of different ways to have this focus lesson. Jan Richardson has different questions that are at the different colored levels. Just teaching kids to answer questions that are just right there in the text, or those thick questions that you have to really think and reread to be able to find the information. So those are some of the things that you're going to be doing with the thick and thin questions. In the primary toolkit, one of your key books would be book 3, because your standards are so much around asking questions. Lessons 8, 9, 10, and 11 really focus on having kids ask the right questions and the processes they go through. It's not essential that you do every lesson if you don't think they fit, but I looked at 10 and 11 thinking that those really would be great lessons. What you want is for them to not just do those lessons, but to do them and then rinse and repeat them with different types of text that you choose. So kids are really familiar with those skills about asking questions. So one of the things you're going to do is model the heart of the story, and you're going to use the organizer from the Norma Jackson organizer, referring to the heart of the story, and this kind of reflects what they're doing in their writing. So using that, how do you identify the central message in a narrative and in an informational text? So through that, you could have a lesson on how to identify moral lessons as themes in fables and myths, or identify the central message or point in an informational text. And as students retell the events in the story, discuss how the writer uses these events to help the reader understand the central message. So you're really trying to get them thinking about the central message of a piece of text. Close reading, you're going to do that once a week, picking a great mentor text in any genres. Basically, you need poetry every week, so doing a close reading with a poem would be amazing, and you move that into a workstation. In the overview, you're going to see a lesson, an explicit lesson on fluency, so you might want to do that on page 7. Look at that lesson, give you the paragraphs to read and everything. One of the things that students need to be able to do this time is to follow written multi-step directions. Treasures, Unit 5, Growing and Changing, had some lessons about following multi-step directions if you want to look in your treasures book. Also, STEM Scopes, this is a great place for you to use those great resources that Brenda has for you. Maybe do an experiment, or if you have recipes, showing them how to follow multi-step instructions. Let's talk a little bit about independent reading, because independent reading is a part of Reading Workshop. It's not something separate. It is not sustained silent reading. It is a time when students take books at their independent reading level and apply the skills that you've taught during a focused lesson. That's the difference between that and sustained silent reading. So this 6 weeks, they're expected to read narrative and informational text. So you'll want to make sure that in their book boxes, they have informational text as well as narrative in their book boxes. They're going to need to complete at least 1 to 3 reading responses, and they can do that in their reader's notebook, or like you could give them a graphic organizer, but having them do something with that independent reading that they're doing. One of the things that we gave you was the tic-tac-toe. It's a very held loosely thing in the curriculum. We gave it to you to really help you to follow through with having them have some, what are they doing with that independent reading. One of the ones that I really thought would be a really great one that goes right along with what our standard is, retell the important events or ideas in a logical order. This would be a focused lesson, and then they would take this out into the workstation and do it with either a piece of text that you've given them or in their independent reading, or they could do it as a buddy read together and fill out this information. One of the things I want to show you is this is the rubric for literary response, which resides in this document with tic-tac-toe. A great lesson to do is to show that, yes, you're wanting them to do some literary responses, but you are also holding them accountable. So you can also, it's a way for you to get a grade off of those responses. Another good resource is Tony Steed. I found this, I've been reading this book about having different responses to independent reading. I've given you the link to his resources. This is just one amazing facts I've learned about. That might be something. You can click on this link and get this resource and lots of other great things to having resources for independent reading. Now is the time where your guided reading is in, you're beginning it, and you have got all the data and you've got your groups. So now you know whether they're in the transitional stage, the emergent stage, or early stage, and you're going to use your Jan Richardson book to really help you. It is like step by step about what those type of readers, the behaviors they have, and then you can also use the continuum to say, okay, these guys are in a level, I want to find out about that level. So you would go to the back of the continuum, that last tab, and look at the characteristics of what that level is, and then where you're heading to get them to move them to the next step. The link here is to the lesson plans that you're going to be using. You'll want to use these with your guided reading group, that it really walks you through the components of that guided reading at that small table. So it's very helpful. So what's the resources you're going to use? You're going to use your leveled libraries in your buildings. Once you find out that a kid is in maybe whatever level they're in, maybe they're in a level J, and maybe your library is labeled with DRAs, then get a correlation chart. Ask your academic coach, or I can give you a leveling correlation chart, and go in there and find some great resources that you are going to use, books that you're going to use, to really push those kids on. Also, you have Reading A to Z. You'll see that you're going to go into your landing page here in your leveled books, and you'll choose that particular level, and then you'll have a plethora of resources that you can choose and print to use in your guided reading. Also, you'll have RAS Kids to get started for a workstation. Your academic coaches will be showing you soon, if you do not know how to. Your kids are already in there, but you will have to level them and show where they need to be. They will then receive a whole bookcase of e-books for them to listen to and to take independent tests on. So that's a great resource as well. Now let's talk about writing. For it to be satisfactory for the second 6 weeks, you need to be at a stage 6 or stronger if you want to be in the strong category where we all want to be. So we are looking toward a 6, and we just ended the BOY, so you should be knowing where your kids are and where they're falling. Just remember, this is about growth. So we want them to write independently for 20 minutes at a time. They should be producing first draft writing with proficiency in the developing of ideas and their accuracy. You need to probably have at least 2 first draft personal narratives, and then 2 first draft informational texts, maybe about social studies or the sciences they're doing. They must spell Unit 1 and 2 spelling concepts, sight words, and homophones designated for second graders. When we're teaching the spelling, we have to hold them accountable for the spelling that we have taught them within their writing. You're going to use the stop routine to proofread and correct previously learned skills, and then use your writer's notebook. Writing workshops should be in full swing now. You should be having a focus lesson and independent writing. You saw where the kids should be at least writing 20 minutes a day. While they're writing, you as a teacher should be individually competent, walking, stopping to notice things about students writing. Take a clipboard, and as you walk by each child, make just a small anecdotal note about what you see. There is where you're going to get your future focus lessons on what skills that you're seeing that they're not securing, or the smart moves they've made that they're applying that you've taught that you're going to then take to reflection time to celebrate. So let's think about some of the focus lessons that you are going to do with your kids. You're going to do transition in my hand. So you see the transition in my hand, you've got that we are transitioning them into from treasure in my hand to 3-box plan. You're going to start with one central message. Remember, we were doing this in reading, so you're doing it in reading, and then you're doing it in writing, and then you're going to add details. See your overview to see the details on that, and then that document that talks about the transition from treasure in my hand to the 3-box plan. One of the things is you want to find a level 6 where you want them to go, and share writing samples of what a 6 looks like, and model and discuss how the information within that 6 looks like in the introduction, the body, and the conclusion, and just modeling where you want them to go. So that's a great focus lesson to have. Here's the new focus lessons that we've given you in writing. It goes along with the stop procedure. So with the S part, you're going to use the second grade organizer, which is the treasure in my hand, going into the 3-box plan to plan their compositions. You're going to introduce a writer's 2 best friend and how and why. That's going to be a major routine that you are going to do a focus lesson on and apply in their writing. You're going to do that many times. You're going to rinse and repeat this focus lesson. In the overall part, you're going to add information to eliminate gaps or clarify an important idea. So you're adding information that maybe there's in their writing that doesn't make sense. And then when they are proofreading and editing, these are the things they're looking for. Looking for K1 concepts of those CVC pattern words, CVC sneaky E pattern words, blends, and then those sight words. You want to make sure that they have those in a snap word spelled correctly and hold them accountable for that. So here again is that focus lesson showing you that you're going to use the treasure in my hand. You're going to continue that. And then your writer's 2 best friends, you're going to have an anchor chart lesson, and you're going to do this lesson with them and rinse and repeat a writer's 2 best friend this 6 weeks. Then with your conventions for prepositional phrases, there is a lesson in your overview that talks about how to introduce prepositional phrases or review prepositional phrases and model how sentences are made with them, and then create an anchor chart about prepositional phrases so they can refer back to. This is something that would go directly into their writer's notebook. What is a prepositional phrase? Why do I want to use them? And then have them and be responsible for putting them into their writing. Also, the other convention is modeling punctuation marks, including apostrophes and contractions. And you would do that, take a couple of sentences out of one of your favorite books where the author does that, and tell them why would you be using those. So that ends the second grade curriculum preview. I hope that you have a great time planning. Please let your academic coach know if you need further help, or myself. You can email me or call me. Happy planning.